We don't have to do this. You know that, right?
What's the other option?
Go back to Tommy's. Just be done with this whole damn thing.
After all we've been through. Everything that I've done. It can't be for nothing.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 18 of the video game podcast, PlayStation Pals. I'm your host, Nick, and I'm joined by the Ethan Winters to my Lady D, John. Now, John, we've turned 18. This means that this is an adult podcast, which means you can drink if you want, and we can say whatever the hell we want.
Awesome, man. Well, jizz.
Sorry?
Well, that's fitting because I'm not wearing any pants for this episode either. So, I think we turned 18 at the right point. Perfect.
I don't even want to know any more about the no pants thing.
Yeah, well, when you're not at work, Nick, all bets are off.
And there are no rules about swearing, but let's try and keep the comments and questions related to the podcast. All right, John?
You got it, Nick. I don't want anybody to have the worst podcast they've ever had.
All right, so let's get right into the format because we got a lot to talk about. So this is how it works. John and I bring 3 things to talk about. It can be a video game we're playing, a news item, an email to PlayStationPalsPod@gmail.com, Twitter DM at PSPalsPod, any of those things. We have an open format. If we feel like talking about it, we'll bring it. So let's get right into it, John. What are you bringing first?
Oh, it's our monthly tradition, Nick. We gotta have at least a couple topics a month about this. Otherwise, what kind of PlayStation podcast would we be? So I wanted to talk, go over the PlayStation Extra and Premium games for the month, since Sony is, not listening to us in the sense that we would appreciate if they just gave us all these games at one time. We have to now be on the lookout twice in a month. So not a big deal, though. But yeah, just wanted to run down this list real quick, and then we can kind of get our thoughts. So the big marquee title, the big title that they have taking up the most amount of space on the infographic they put out is Grand Theft Auto Vice City Definitive Edition. This is the remake/remaster that came out to pretty poor reception last year, but this is just the Vice City game out of that trilogy. And then we're also getting the other big game of the month, I would say, is Dragon Quest XI, the S edition, which is basically the definitive edition of the game. That's coming to PlayStation 4. I should have said Vice City is coming to PS4 and PS5. And then we're also getting a slew of Assassin's Creed titles. They feels like they just needed to get the rest of them out onto there that weren't already on the service. So we got Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a lot of people's favorite of that new Assassin's Creed formula. And then we have Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered, as well as a trilogy of the kind of forgotten about 2D Assassin's Creed games that they came out with a couple years ago. The Assassin's Creed Chronicles games, which is China, Russia, and India. Those are 3 different games at 3 different settings. So we're getting all that. And then additionally, we are getting the Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2. As well as Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2. So kind of an odd choice to release both of those, since I think everybody's just why would anybody want to play 1 as opposed to 2 for either of those? And then additionally, just a couple more, we're getting The Medium for PS5, which is a Bloober Team game that was exclusive for Xbox. I believe it was a launch title. If not, it was pretty close to release for the next-gen system. So if you are a fan of horror games and stuff like that, you can check that out. And then a couple more, Hohokum, which is a PS4, it's one of the weirdest games I've ever played. You basically play as this little line where you're kind of like flying around and doing weird, goofy things. It's a very niche title, so, might be for some of you out there. Then we have Naruto to Boruto, Shinobi Striker, coming to PS4. This one's kind of a rubs me the wrong way because we just got this game for PS Plus back in June. So it just kind of seems like that's a little extra padding that they're trying to pass on people. And then last but not least, a gem of a PS4 game. Nick, I want to make sure you get to this one because I know you haven't played it, and that's Inside, which is from Playdead, who did Limbo. So very much...
Does it have a platinum?
Oh, good. It doesn't. It does not have a platinum.
I'm sorry.
I know.
If they don't have platinums, that's the policy of this podcast. If they don't have platinum, we don't play them.
Yeah, I know, and that I looked that up today too, just because I thought I remember when I played it that there wasn't one, because it is a game that in fact, I would encourage anybody who is going to play that game, play it in one sitting if you can. It's about 3 hours. It's not a long time, but if you played Limbo, the gameplay is very similar. You know, you're kind of going, just walking to the right, but there's environmental puzzles and things like that. And then additionally, we have a couple games coming to the premium tier list. So that is the highest tier. You know, if you're a subscriber there, you're going to get those classic games, PS1 games, as well as some PS3 games. Only PS3 games this month. So again, kind of a weird start to the service, I think. But we're getting Yakuza 3, 4, and 5. Limbo, as I was just talking about, that was from Playdead, the game that came out before Inside. Then you're getting Ultra Street Fighter 4, Castlevania Lords of the Shadow, and Everyday Shooter. So not great on the premium front, but Nick, what kind of stands out for you from this list? Is there anything you're excited to play?
Yeah, Dragon Quest XI is pretty up there. We have a friend of the show that just recently played the fuck out of this game. I think around 100 hours, so... And I know Video Game Donkey also thought very highly of this game, and it is sitting at an 88. So that is one that I definitely want to check out. And then, hold
on, slight correction. The S edition is actually sitting at a 92, Nick.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yes, the standard is 88, but the S, which I know they added the ability, you can play the whole game in like old school 2D sprite stuff, which is pretty cool. They really gave a lot of extra bells and whistles, but anyway, just wanted to correct you there.
Sure. And then, as much as I just said that about Inside, I actually do want to check it out because I've never played it, and I enjoyed Limbo, so I should probably check this out. But other than that, no, not really. Dragon Quest Heroes is a Muso game, so no dice.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest Builders, no, that doesn't look good. And then everything else is just okay. And that being said, all these games are coming out like at the kind of the wrong time. Plague Tale Requiem comes out on the same day that these come out, and then we're going right into that big boy, that big God of War Ragnarok. So I probably won't be touching a single one of these games. Maybe Inside, but that's it. But it's a good list. I do like it.
Yep, herein lies the fallacy of the subscription model, man. It's like I have been wanting to get to Dragon Quest XI for years, but to try and fit a 100-hour JRPG in somewhere is damn near impossible. So I don't know if we'll be able to touch that, but yeah, I think it's a pretty good list overall too. You know, Inside is also a 91 on Metacritic or OpenCritic, so you know we got a duo of 90+ game titles in there, and you know I think if you kind of know what your tastes are, like for instance Dragon Quest Builders, I played the first one. It was actually pretty enjoyable, and I don't even like those type of games. But those are sitting at an 83 and an 85 respectively on OpenCritic. So like obviously they're well put together games in that genre. And even the Heroes Muso games, those are 77 and 78, which is pretty good for that genre. But it seems like this month is a combination of niche titles that are gonna, you know, maybe hit a couple different people, like they say a lot of times at conferences, right, Nick? Is like they don't expect every one of these things to hit for every single person, but if you can find one or two things in a list, you know, then I think developers and publishers and companies like Sony, you know, they consider that a win. So,
sure.
Yeah, I would encourage you just to kind of take your own tastes into this. Like, you know, if you like horror games, maybe check out The Medium. That got a 92 from PC Gamer, but only a 4 from Metro Game Central. So, you know, there's a lot of polarizing stuff in this, but yeah, overall, pretty good list. I do find it funny that it seems like there is this weird thing going on with the extras tiers where they're just making deals with franchises. We've gotten like every Yakuza game, every Assassin's Creed game. Now it seems like we're getting every Dragon Quest game. So, you know, it seems like these deals that are being made for this stuff, it's like a... hey, we want all your shit. We don't want just one or two. We want all of it. So I don't know. Maybe one day we'll start seeing Resident Evil get rolled into it, or you know, Final Fantasy. Some of these older, you know, storied franchises that they have a ton of stuff to do. But yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, and it's also weird that we're reading Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2, Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like my thinking would be like have October be one of the games, and then November be the other one, but.
Yeah, that's why I think it seems like whatever deal was made, it was just like, hey, we're gonna purchase your whole catalog, and Sony then just made the decision that, maybe they have there's a reality too where like companies are dying to get into that program. I don't know, because we know how many PS4s are in the wild, we know how strong of a brand Sony is, and the exposure that these companies can get. So yeah, there might just be a list of like, yeah, we want all our franchises, take it all,
Right.
and they're just moving on to the next thing. So. I don't know. It is kind of weird subscribing to it, though, and knowing that I'm not going to play any of these things. I'm like, well, is it worth it? But,
Of course, it still is.
It is. It still is. The value is incredible.
Because, again, nothing. I know there was that article about Soma coming off on 10/18, but in that article, they didn't mention any games being removed yet still.
Well, what's really weird is Red Dead 2 has been removed, but again, I saw articles about Soma, but I didn't see articles about Red Dead. So it's just really weird to me that happened.
What?
Yeah.
No
I mean,
from Sony about what's coming off.
Not that I saw, because my friend who lives in Colorado, he fell in love with Red Dead 2 when he got his PS5 about a month ago, and he texted me the other day. He's like, "What the heck what happened to Red Dead?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I went to the store, and it told me that I had to buy it, so it's not extra anymore. I don't know why, but
okay.
yeah. There's some. You need a sleuthy eye, an investigative eye for some of this shit, man. And that's kind of like, I guess, a small little thing about these new services is there's so many things coming and going and moving pieces that you could get something swept around under your feet, and then you're like, well, shit, I was halfway through that, now I have to go buy it.
Yeah,
maybe that's
horrible.
intentional.
But no,
Yeah.
I hope not. I know at least Xbox announces all the games leaving Game Pass, so that's frustrating. We should know 30 days out. So
right.
if they go, hey, Dragon Quest 11 is going to be out January 1st, well, fuck, I'm going to make sure in December I'm playing Dragon Quest 11 before it gets removed. So that is, I don't like that at all.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe next week we can, if there's a list of games that have been removed or whatever, more things that we don't know of, we'll make sure we bring that. But something to note at least for sure.
And what do you make of this asterisk that's on Assassin's Creed India, Russia, and Syndicate that says it's PS4 only?
I have no fucking idea, man. I mean, I consider myself, you and I, we have a fucking podcast, right? We're pretty in tune with this shit, and usually you can kind of read between the lines or think of a reason, but the fact that 2 out of the 3 Assassin's Creed Chronicle games are only PS4 and the other one isn't, I don't know what that's about. Sony, I think, is pretty known for being poor on the software side. They seem to struggle when it comes to, obviously the infamous name change thing. Or porting all the games from PS4 to PS5. I remember when the console got rolled out, there was a list of 15 games, even though they were minor games, but they just couldn't figure out how to do it. So this might just be a situation where I don't know, man, these are broken, but at least we'll release them because we can get them on the PS4, and that's where there's 120 million of them out there. But it's weird for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna look for these on Tuesday to see if it's even possible to download them to my PS5.
Yeah,
that'll be
call.
Interesting.
Weird.
All right. Well, a decent month again, for sure.
Yeah.
To wrap it up. All right. So let's move on, since, again, this is the 18th episode, the adults-only episode of the podcast. I wanted to cover... What?
It's not for kids.
Yeah, it's not for kids. That's right. I wanted to talk about what also is not for kids, and that is M-rated games. So... if you're probably aware of, especially if you're younger, the ESRB rates all the games, and if a game's rated M, technically, you have to be 17 or older to buy it. I know John and I are older now. We haven't cared about these ratings in a long time. But I kind of want to just talk about M-rated games, and typically that falls into 2 categories, right? Just like movies, right? It's violence and sex.
Yep.
So, kind of just wanted to talk about those 2 things in relation to video games. John, do you have any M-rated games that you wanted to talk about in regards to those 2 subjects?
Yeah, I mean, a couple. I have a couple memories of being, probably getting into some things a little bit before I should have. I'll date myself. I'm 33, right? So I am right in the middle of that growing up with Grand Theft Auto age, right? I remember being 13 years old and seeing Grand Theft Auto 3 and just needing that game, right? I had older friends playing it. I had, friends with siblings who had it, and so I saw what it was. And so we did what all kids do, is try to, explain to your parents, who obviously don't know anything about this medium, why you should be able to get it and talk your way around it. And they wouldn't let me do it, which these are the parents who bought me Limp Bizkit and the Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water or whatever when that album came out and I was like 11. So I didn't understand it. So what did I have to do? Well, I went up to Blockbuster and fucking argued and bartered and pleaded with the guy, the 18-year-old snot-nosed kid to let me buy it from him. And he did. So I had it. So it was good. But, obviously, I don't need to say anything more about Grand Theft Auto, whether it's, running people over with your car, prostitutes, all that good stuff. But, when I think of specific instances in video games, M-rated instances, I think there's three maybe that really stick out for me. One is the God of War sex minigame from the first one, right? I think what that game came out in 2005, so I was 16. What 16-year-old boy doesn't want to consistently just do the sex minigame? So, did that probably more times than I'm care to admit.
Which one was your favorite? Which God of War sex minigame?
Well, the one I'm thinking of is it's like in the very beginning of the first game. That's the one I think of. Right, you're on the ship fighting the Hydra, and you just are learning what currency is, and they're like, well, here, have sex with this woman to get currency. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds good. And it does the ridiculous thing where I think it's like some QTEs, some QuickTime events, and once you get to the climax, quote unquote, you're pressing the button faster, and it's just it's absurd. But so there's that one really sticks out. Infamously, Call of Duty No Russian is on the other end of the spectrum, like you said, the violence side, where you're doing some pretty heinous things during that scene. Being a terrorist, shooting innocent people is.
Did you play that level? Because you do have the option to skip it.
Nick, of course I played that level. Did you not?
No, I played it. I'm just curious.
Oh, okay.
Because they gave you the option to skip it, and then my follow-up question is that did you pull the trigger?
I killed every single person.
Wow.
Yes,
what a monster.
Dude, I was like, I don't know, what year did Modern Warfare 2 come out? I don't know, probably 2005 again, 2006.
No.
I was a 17. No? I mean, I think COD 4 was like 2004, wasn't it?
2009.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Dang. All right. Well, I was 20. Yeah. So whatever. I don't care about human life. What am I supposed to care?
Yeah, you're a monster. Sorry about that. Some technical difficulties there. John was such a horrible human being that the podcast had to boot him.
Yeah, the ESRB, I guess, did not approve of of this podcast. Sorry, guys. Anyway, No Russian. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. And then the last one here that I think of is, did you ever play Duke Nukem 3D, Nick?
Yes. So as you mentioned, the game I shouldn't have been playing. That was up there. Yep. Shake it, baby.
Well, and keep in mind, Nick, you're 5 years older than I am, so yeah, I should not have been playing that game either. But the very crude late '90s PC graphics of strippers with nipple pasties on, and just it was very akin to watching Showtime or Cinemax or whatever that stuff where you're trying to watch the porn through the static. It's not quite there, but as a kid don't care. You just, oh, boobs. Oh.
Well, internet porn wasn't a thing, so you took
That's
what
also
you could
true.
get. So
That is true, but yeah, those are kind of like the main ones I think of. There's some honorable mentions like God of War 3 just being overly violent, ripping heads and stuff off. But the last thing that I wanted to say, at least for me, about M-rated games, and I kind of just realized this as I was doing a little bit of research for it, is it seems like to tell a story that gets cherished and heralded to the level like of a Last of Us, you almost have to have an M-rated game. I was kind of looking down the list. It's like The Last of Us, Red Dead, Half-Life, Silent Hill 2, BioShock, Mass Effect, Witcher 3, Walking Dead, Persona series, Metal Gear franchise, Nier Automata, even Life is Strange, Quantic Dream, Until Dawn. These are all M-rated games. And like I was just trying to find non-M-rated games that tell super strong stories, and the only like Portal, Chrono Trigger, some JRPGs, of course. But I just find it interesting, that us as a human, society, whatever you want to say, that we really latch on to the M-rated stuff, right? Whether it's violence, sex, it just allows for more real adult stories to be told, which are the ones that we typically latch on to. So I just found that pretty interesting, where the best storytelling games are almost always rated M, and if it's not rated M, for a game to truly ascend to that top tier level, it has to really just nail something else. Like the Mario games nails platforming, or Journey is an experience. But it's just I found it interesting and something I never really thought of how integral storytelling is to a mature sensibility, I guess. I found it interesting.
And in video games, just the mechanics alone, lend very well to violence.
Right.
You gotta
is
interact
true.
with something on screen. You're usually shooting it or beating it up or chopping it in half. So
Right.
So that's just how it's gonna be. Yeah, I was thinking about with violence, what sticks with me, and usually if the game is more lifelike and more human, the worse it is for me, I it upsets me. So I think of The Last of Us Part 2 especially, right?
Yeah.
Not only the story moments in that game and the ending of that game, which I was just exhausted. It was so just was getting to me. But
Yeah,
even just fighting the NPCs and then them saying no, don't shoot me, and you shoot them, or they're calling out of the characters after you kill one. It's oh god, I hate doing this.
Man, I remember when you came to work the day after you did the end of The Last of Us 2, and yeah, you're like, dude, I had to take a second. And I was like, man, am I just a cold dead individual? Because I was like, yeah, it's fine. The name calling and all that stuff. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, screw you, Jimmy. Fuck you, Jimmy.
Yeah, I think we're learning a lot about you in this podcast. You're one evil motherfucker.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, this is where you learn the real John. We're in the adult section now, buddy.
Yeah. And then even in the Tomb Raider reboot, some of the or in Dead Space, as we mentioned, some of the deaths in that are just oh my god, you have to look away. You know, watching Lara Croft get a stick impaled through her face is not fun to watch, but if you keep failing a certain part, you have to see it over and over again. And then, I mean, if we're talking about violence in video games, we have to talk about Mortal Kombat, the whole fatalities thing, which is just another thing that's getting worse and worse. Is the graphics, the fidelity of graphics gets better and better. If you watch those Mortal Kombat 11 fatalities, some of them you might close your eyes on because they're pretty rough.
It's pretty incredible when you think about, so 11 mainline Mortal Kombat games at the very least, right? And we'll just say an average of 15 characters per game. That's a lot of fatalities they have to think of. They have to go to some deep, dark places to ratchet things up still.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, how many times can Sub-Zero rip a spine out? How many different ways?
Yeah. Well, how many ways can you freeze a person? That many ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then on the sex side of things, it's video game sex is just hilarious. It's always very cartoony. It's not even it's not even something you could be into because it's so absurd sometimes, it was a big payoff in the Mass Effect games, right? You would romance a certain character or Dragon Age Inquisition I'll put in there as well. But you'd romance a character the whole game, be all cute and flirty, and then you would get to this, the sex scene, and it would be just like, it'd make you laugh. It's so bad. and even like the recent games, like The Witcher 3, all the people that Geralt hooks up with, all the scenes are they're just funny. And sometimes I wonder if that's intentional.
It's probably it might be sometimes intentional, but I gotta imagine, much like writing like comedy or something, everything. So it's got to be so hard to write an authentic like scene like that has emotion on that level.
Right.
It's so hard to do. I can only think of one instance that is not cringy to me, and that's again The Last of Us 2. Is they're so good at character building, and Naughty Dog is that like you actually believe Ellie and Dina, right? Mm-hmm. Dina's her name. Yeah. You actually believe it. So
yeah. And then with like Cyberpunk, like the first person sex scenes on that, there's something like games are getting there. like the characters are looking more and more real, and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just wait till Unreal 5 really starts to get unleashed, man. It's gonna be nuts.
Yeah. So, again, as you mentioned, like just video games lend themselves well to violence, and there's so many M-rated games, so many out there. They're all M-rated. The second you have to shoot people, it's M-rated.
It's true.
Or if there's any blood, it's going to be M-rated. So.
You did bring up something interesting though, Nick, and I never really kind of thought about how I process things. Obviously, we're learning right now that I am a cold-hearted individual, but violence in game. There are a few instances that I can think of that like kind of made me like feel something like my stomach drop, and the one that does it the most is it's a very specific moment, and maybe you have just seen it. I'm not sure. We'll find out when you talk about The Last of Us. But in The Last of Us Part 1, there's this scene where Joel is climbing up a ladder and he falls, and like this not sharp rebar piece goes through his back and through his gut. And that happened for the first time, I went like, oh no! Like I stood up immediately and like grabbed the part of my body that happened to him. And I think the reason I did that is because that is a situation that I can envision myself in. I can't envision myself having a zombie attack me. I can't envision myself, falling or doing these crazy things that we see in video games all the time. But I can feel myself falling off a ladder and something like that happening. It's like, oh God. So there is something, I think, to the sense of realism lending itself to how much it truly does affect me, I guess.
Sure, yeah. Both Last of Us games are full of violence like that.
Yeah.
That violence you can feel yourself. You can picture happening to you. Broken ankles, broken bones. Ugh.
Yeah, no, for sure. But even something like, like in The Last of Us, if somebody slits somebody's throat with a knife, it's like I can't really imagine that in my life because it would but I can see myself being a klutz and falling and going, oh God. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. No, definitely relatable violence is definitely a thing, for sure.
Yeah, it's ugh.
All right, so I think we're done here, so let's move on to the next topic.
All right, so speaking of rated M games, so kind of continuing our spooky October theme, we got to talk about the granddaddy of the horror franchises, my friend. What franchise do you think that is, Nick?
I know what it is. It is Resident Evil, or is it Biohazard?
No, dude, it's layers of fear. Come on. Oh, yeah, Resident Evil. And you actually skipped ahead. I was actually going to ask you, I was going to quiz you to see if you know what this franchise was called in Japan. So well done. It's called Biohazard. So, yeah, similar to, what we've been doing here, kind of want to cover the big franchises, the big, things in gaming that we've all spent, 25, 30 years around. And Resident Evil seemed like the perfect time to talk about it. So first thing I want to do here, Nick, is I want to just get a sense of which Resident Evil games you've played, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to go through the mainline games. I skipped things like Revelations because I don't think you ever were a 3DS guy. But so have you played Resident Evil 1, 1996, Resident Evil 1?
No, I played the GameCube remake.
Okay.
That is on PlayStation now.
Yep. Resident Evil 2, 1998.
I have played that one. Yes. Yep. When it came out.
Okay. Okay. Resident Evil 3.
No.
Okay. Code Veronica.
Nope.
Okay. Resident Evil 0. That would be weird if you
Yes.
have. Really? Okay.
Yeah, that was on GameCube.
Okay. Resident Evil 4, obviously.
Yep.
Resident Evil 5.
Yep. I got all the achievements in Resident Evil 5.
Wow, look at you. 6.
No. I take that back. I've played it, not beaten it. That game is horrible.
It is the worst. 7.
Nope.
Yeah, and I know you didn't do 8 because you're a first-person coward. And you haven't touched either of the 2 remakes, right?
Correct. Other than I played the demo for 2.
Okay, so you have Resident Evil 2, 0, 4, 5, 6, and then I have Resident Evil 3, 4, 5, 7, 2 remake, 3 remake, and 8. So I have 7, you have 5. So we're both kind of, pretty close there. But so I just wanted to kind of get a quick history because this is a very interesting franchise, right? A lot of franchises that last this long, they've lasted this long for a reason. There's a history there, there's a fan base and all that good stuff. But I don't know if there's as many franchises that have gone up and down as Resident Evil has. And maybe it's not up and down and then up and down and then up and down and then up and down, but they went through some shit back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, man. They had a kind of an identity crisis where they didn't really know where to take the franchise because you can kind of dissect the Resident Evil games into like 3 different trilogies actually, which is kind of interesting. You have your PlayStation 1 trilogies, Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, which were all very similar styles, close corridors. You're probably in a single location, right? The hardware is pretty limited. And then, they had to expand the formula. You got your Code Veronicas and your Resident Evil Zeros, but I would almost classify those as spin-offs. And then you had your 4, 5, and 6 trilogy, and this is when the series kind of took an action route, where Resident Evil 4 came out, and I think it's pretty much agreed upon that Resident Evil 4 is the one. If anybody was going to pick a single Resident Evil 4 that's the best, it's almost always that. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of people that kind of blame Resident Evil 4 for taking the franchise in a poor direction that lasted about 15 years probably about 10 to 12 years before they were actually able to regain what made Resident Evil special. Because 4 was very action heavy. It was the first, close over the shoulder third person camera angle, which actually it's like the genesis of that camera angle for all the third person games we have going forward. So it's obviously very, very important in that regard. But then I think the people at Capcom, they took the lessons they learned from that game and applied them in the wrong way. They just started to go far too much into the action, not enough of the claustrophobic, atmospheric things that people, liked a mixture of when they got with 4. And then it culminated with 6, which was basically an action game. I didn't play it, so, I don't know if you want to even speak on 6, because nobody likes that game. But as far as I understand, it was just like a third-person shooter, right? Like,
yeah, it was weird because there were 3 different campaigns, and each campaign was kind of like an era, as you mentioned, or a trilogy, where one was more like the original Resident Evils, and then you had the Chris Redfield, which was more like 4 through 5, and then there was the batshit crazier one. I forget the characters that were in that, but they had some new character there. I think that was Wesker's daughter or something. Okay. It got really anime in that 3rd campaign, but I could not complete a single one. They were all bad. That game played horribly, didn't feel good, and yeah, the writing was just, oh my god.
Yeah, it's just so weird. Like Resident Evil 4 has a 96 on Metacritic. 96. Mm-hmm. Resident Evil 6 has a 60. So it's just they lost an identity. They lost what they were doing. And that's why I think Resident Evil 7 is so incredible. It's honestly one of my favorite games from 2017, one of my favorite games on PlayStation 4, just because they finally realized what they needed to do with that franchise and what made it truly special. It was going back to that claustrophobic, atmospheric, presentation. We're going back to a house, where you have to deal with the, I can't remember the family's name. Well, but it had, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre style Louisiana Bayou family that you just felt their presence the entire time, and really reinvigorated the series, so much so that they decided to stick with the first person formula into Village. And it seems, I don't know if they're going to do that for 9 or not. Mm-hmm. But they're kind of back where they were. Capcom as a company is kind of back where they were in those, the heyday, where they were able to, I don't know if they were able to focus a little bit more or just figure out what it was that the people wanted, but definitely excited to see where the series goes from here on out. But just a couple of things, Nick. I mean, do you know the creator of the Resident Evil franchise?
You're gonna say his name and then I'll know. It's what is it, Shinji Mikami?
Yeah, good boy. Yep, Shinji Mikami. And do you also know what game? So he was the director of Resident Evil 4, right? He's the creator of the whole series, but he hasn't directed every game. But he was the director of Resident Evil 4. Do you know what game was originally supposed to be Resident Evil 4?
It was a Devil May Cry game, wasn't it?
Yep, Devil May Cry 1. So Devil May Cry was originally supposed to be Resident Evil 4, and they decided to make it its own thing after kind of realizing that it wasn't really what they wanted the franchise to be, but also that it was this cool-ass idea. So Shinji Mikami also brought us Devil May Cry, and then can you name the other semi-famous/famous franchise that he is the creator of?
He's at The Evil Within?
Yep. All right. You get a cookie. Good job, Nick.
I expect my cookie.
You will get a cookie. But yeah, I mean, do you have any overall thoughts on the series, Nick? It's not for me as high tier as something like a God of War or a Last of Us, but it is still obviously the horror franchise in gaming, and a lot of people have a lot of fond memories with it. So, anything you want to say on Resident Evil?
When I was thinking about this topic, I was trying to think, like, why is this the one? Like, why is this the premier horror franchise? Like, we're not even getting into, like, the externally. Like, this property has had movies, television shows. Yeah. Like, not just, like, one or two, like, a billion. Like there's so many out there. Like, what do you think of the DNA of Resident Evil makes it so attractive? Because when you think of, like, even, like, the earlier games, like the tank controls, they were isometric views where you had to slowly turn your character to walk in that direction, so like the controls were that, and then the famous line, the Jill sandwich, so even the writing was kind of goofy. Again, wow. Who'd have thought episode 18? We're the podcast is getting a little surly in its adult
Nick,
age.
You can't talk about the insurrection. You can't do it, Nick. Stop it.
Oh, I'm sorry. But back to our topic, like, what do you think it is about Resident Evil that makes it so popular? Like, what is the thing that, I know, like, Resident Evil 4 is definitely a very, very good game, but what do you think of, why do you think this franchise is so beloved and so obsessed with? Like I said, it's just, its reach extends everywhere and very successfully everywhere, except for the current Netflix show.
Yeah, the current Netflix. Yeah. I think when you have to evaluate Resident Evil, much like anything, especially in media, you need to compare it against its contemporaries. And when Resident Evil 1 came out in 1996, I'm sure there's others, but from what I can think of, is the only thing we really had in the survival horror genre was probably Alone in the Dark. And if you look up screenshots of that game now, it is the earliest form of polygonal 3D things you can possibly look at. It's nothing pretty. And so when that came out, it was probably a little bit of people were like, oh, this is something new and refreshing. We don't get very many spooky things at all when it comes to video games. Mm-hmm. And then so you can combine that with the fact that although as bad as they look nowadays, if you go back to 1996, people thought that video game graphics on the PlayStation were incredible. Mm-hmm. So I think, it was the first realization of something that was truly scary, or people could put themselves in that situation. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say the dog in Resident Evil 1 scared the shit out of them. Right. And all that happens is it just jumps through a window. It's like nothing. It's not the scariest thing at all. But I think, in that scenario, it really captured people's attention. And what I think Resident Evil also has done well, to stay relevant, to keep the fire burning with its fans, is it's found the perfect balance between combat, exploration, and scares. Because I think of a lot of horror games nowadays that really focus on maybe one of those things. They're going to find an audience, but they're going to find an audience within that specific thing, whether it's more walking simulator, horror-esque, something like Visage or something like Soma. There are fans of these games, but they don't ascend to the next level. Or even something like Outlast, right? It's cool, it's scary, but you can't even fight in that game. So I know me personally, I was like, it's not for me. But Resident Evil was able to capture, I think, both sides of the spectrum. And then especially with 4, I think 4 was probably the perfect blend of that. If you like shooting, if you liked action, you're going to be satisfied, especially towards the end of the game. If you like the environments and the atmosphere, you're going to be satisfied just due to the level of detail and care that they put into that world. Sure. So I think it's probably something, in that realm. But yeah, I don't know how they need to solve the puzzle for outside of video games, though, man, because they haven't figured that one out yet.
Well, the movies were very successful, but speaking of puzzle, that's kind of the element of a series we haven't touched on, and that is that it is built on a bunch of crazy, ridiculous puzzles. And I think that is another part of its success is all the puzzle mechanics, getting that spade key and then having a whole another part of the house to get into, or the police station or wherever, and have been in every game. It's part of the DNA of that franchise is to have puzzles to think about, and when you figure it out, there's that satisfying feeling. So when you think about between the scares and the action, you got this kind of adventure game-esque puzzle mechanic that's fun. It's satisfying.
It is. I will say I have a love-hate relationship with those puzzles, man. There is nothing worse than, especially, and it doesn't happen so much anymore because you get like maps and stuff, but like an old school survival horror game where you get a key and you're like, where the fuck was that door? Where was that door? and then you're just running around and you can't find the door or whatever. But when you finally do use the thing that you got for the purpose that it's for, yes, very, very satisfying. And then, it just opens up a whole new land to explore. So,
sure.
It's, yeah.
And what do you think of this Resident Evil 4 remake? Are you going to play this? Are you interested?
Oh, yes. I'm a sucker for nostalgia first and foremost. So, yeah, I will definitely play it. Resident Evil 4, top 3 PS2 game for me. I've always wanted to go back and replay it, but every time I've tried to start it, I feel like I'm a little too far past the control scheme. It just feels a little too clunky. So I end up putting it down after just kind of getting through the village part, right? And but yeah, so getting a full-on remake, Resident Evil 2 is probably, I would say Resident Evil 2 is in the running for the greatest remake of all time, alongside Final Fantasy VII and Shadow of the Colossus probably. So adding that level to their best game is going to be exciting. I think they have to tread carefully. Anytime you remake or remaster these beloved properties, you have to make sure that you're true to the original vision, but still make it fresh and exciting for the new players. But it's going to look amazing, I'm sure. I just hope they don't try to get too creative with it, because I didn't really like what they did with Resident Evil 3, and I just hope it's more of a 2 remake, less of a 3 remake. And the other thing that does make me a little nervous is nothing to do with the game itself, is that we're getting Callisto Protocol in December, we're getting Dead Space Remake in January. Like, am I really going to want to dive into another scary, spooky game in March? I think it's March.
Yeah.
Am I really going to want to do that? So it might be something I play down the road and not at launch, but I will definitely play it at some point.
Sure. And then as far as Resident Evil 9, what do you think they're gonna do, or what do you want them to do?
I think the answer to that is hidden in the Winter's DLC right now, which is Resident Evil Village was first person, but with the DLC that they're adding, which I think comes out this week if I'm not mistaken, it's super close. Okay, so 2 weeks. They're adding third person mode. So I think that right there is probably them testing the waters for do we have the ability to do both of these? Because I'm sure if they listen to fan feedback, they're going to have a pretty, I don't know if it's 50-50, but I think it's pretty close. Like, probably slightly in favor of the third person viewpoint, but I myself included, I know there's a lot of people that really dig what they did with first person. So to have the option to do both right out of the gate would be huge. And if they don't do it right out of the gate, I think they'll stick with first person and add in a third person like they did with Village. But I would bet that they do both.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with you. I bet you it'll be both. I think we've said as much in earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
Do you have any? I don't even know what I'm going to ask you because you don't play these games for the story. So I mean, whatever it is, you're just there.
Yeah, I mean, I know they've said they've finished the Ethan Winters saga, thank God, because he's a man with no face. It's hard to care about a man with no face. So I don't know, man. I mean, Leon is my boy. I guess if I had to pick anybody, just because Four is my favorite by far outside of 7. I like it more than 7, but I don't like Ethan Winters, so he can fuck right off. I don't have any affinity. Jill's the girl from the first one, right?
Yes.
With the beret.
And she's in 5 as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably time to go back to Jill. I think it's probably time to go back to Jill. It's been a minute, and I don't know if they would want to go right back to Leon after doing 4 remakes. So. I don't know.
And I get Jill is in 3 too as well.
Oh yeah.
But I hope they can stay away from the existing characters. I think it's more interesting if the established characters are on the sideline. Maybe they make a cameo like Chris did in the more recent Resident Evils, but. They're nothing special. They're just people.
Yeah. I almost wonder if they should start It's interesting because any video game franchise that has made it to this number of games, like 9, right? Having a 9, the only ones I can think of are JRPGs, which have standalone stories, right? Mm-hmm. Final Fantasy is not tied to any of the other ones, or same thing with Dragon Quest. So it's weird because. You start introducing new characters, and you have to probably introduce this new reason that is tied to Umbrella Corp and this new reason that is tied to Raccoon City, and you start shoehorning things in. So yeah, it'd almost be interesting if they just kind of not reboot the series, but I don't know, figure out a way to make it its own thing, because I don't want a game full of half-assed connections to what's already happened. It never works out when they do that kind of stuff. So, but I don't know if I would had an idea, I'd be a writer at Capcom, I guess.
yeah. I guess we'll see. We'll have to probably be a minute before we get another Resident Evil announcement. So, yeah. But we still have Resident Evil 4 to look forward to. So, Woo. All right. Moving on, I'm going to take the next 2 topics as I've been playing some games. The first one being I finally got through the queue, and I got into Overwatch 2. Finally. Woo. Ooh. Okay. So Overwatch 2 is very misleading. I do not think it should ever have been called Overwatch 2, but whatever. What does that mean? Because it is just plain Overwatch. Nothing really has changed very much. As we mentioned before in our State of Blizzard, that it has moved to a free-to-play method. And when you take it from that perspective, if I was, 15, no money, Overwatch 2 is an amazing proposition. 35 heroes, great multiplayer, it's classes. It's that same game that won Game of the Year in 2016. But I think if anyone has played that game in 2016, if you're coming to this, you're going to be really, really disappointed. Yeah. Outside of a few new heroes, a few new maps, there's not a lot different here. A few characters have been fine-tuned, but man, I played a few of I played Mystery Heroes first, because that's just the fun mode. You randomly spawn as any character, so that was fun. And then I was just playing a few competitive matches, and I'm like, man, this game has not changed. This is the same map I played with the same character. Nothing's changed on them. It's just gross. It's just yeah, what is going on? And as we mentioned, COVID was a thing. Video game development is a thing, and and Blizzard's going through a lot right now, as we talked about last week. But yeah, this game is not not great. It's
Yeah, it really should have been from the get-go an update to the game announcing they're going free to play. Don't put a 2 on it. I'm sure they did it for shareholders and things like that, but all that this type of stuff does, man, like we talked about last week with Blizzard, it just harms the brand. It harms that Blizzard magic that one could argue is not even a thing anymore. And it's just I've only heard disappointment. I'm not an Overwatch guy. It's crazy to see, though, that a team like Blizzard puts out a sequel to a Game of the Year winner, and it's received this way. Like you said, it's not a terrible game by any stretch of the imagination, but it would be like God of War Ragnarok coming out and just kind of being like everything, like nothing is moved, no needle is moved at all. It's the same exact shit. And it gets a 79. It's like, is it bad? No, but this is not what we're hoping for. And I don't know, man. It just it sows more doubt into Blizzard as a team, But if I was that 15-year-old boy, I would definitely look at it. But I can't imagine I would choose that over Destiny 2 or over Fortnite. I haven't played Fortnite, but everybody fucking it's crazy. It's crazy how that game is still as strong as it was, and everybody who plays it now is just like, yeah, it's actually a great game. Like, if you can get behind or past the flossing and all that V-Bucks and all that kind of stuff, but. It's disappointing, man. If you want to watch any more of it, check out Donkey's latest video. He has some more thoughts on that too, and talks about it in true Donkey ways. But
the game is very fast. Like, everything's fast. Like matches load fast. Once a game it says you're in a game, you're in a game. Like, that's great and all. I want to ask you about what they did to the competitive mode, because you play competitive Rocket League.
Okay.
And in Rocket League competitiveness, typically when you win or lose a game, you typically either rank up or down, or rank down, or you stay the same. Like, you get some kind of an instant feedback, right?
Yeah.
In Overwatch, your rank does not adjust until you have 7 wins or 20 losses, and then your ranking adjusts. How do you feel about that?
I don't understand it. Like, what? So let's just say in you're a gold, right? We're gonna use Rocket League terms because that's what I know. So if you're a gold and you win 7 matches, you would go up to gold 2, or
you would get re-ranked basically. So you don't know where you would be. So you might be gold 2, or you might make it to platinum. You don't know. So the minuscule adjustments would be gone. You would just get the feedback, like I said, every 7 wins or 20 losses, you would move somewhere. So
I just don't understand the lopsidedness of those numbers. Like, why is it not 10 and 10 or 5 and 5? Or is there a reason? I honestly don't know.
No, I don't know either. I think.
What is that benefit?
So the community does not like this, as you can imagine, and their thought is that this is to keep you playing longer. So, if I want to see what my rank is and I'm at 4 or 5 wins, maybe I'm gonna play until I get that 7th win. So
yeah.
So their thought is, hey, every time I hop on, I don't know what happened to my rank. Like, I played 10 games, but I didn't reach any of those numbers, and then,
because you went 4 wins, 6 losses, nothing would adjust.
Right. Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, dude. Like, that's why I enjoy Rocket League. Because, yeah, like you said, it's immediate. Like, if I am a Diamond 2 and I lose 2 games, I'm going to Diamond 1. If I win 2 games, I'm going up to Diamond. Like, it's predictable.
Yep, and that's how it used to be. So, it
seems like every single decision that this game has made is just the wrong one. I don't know the game very well, but can you speak a little bit more to this whole, there's only one tank thing now, and the tanks have been incredibly buffed or something, and that's throwing some things off. I'm not sure what's up with that.
I don't know. I'm assuming they did this to either make games faster, because games can't be in a stalemate, because that's what tanks can do, right? Reinhardt has a shield, Orisa can do shields. Tanks, as they do in most video games, they can soak up damage, so they draw out matches longer. So my guess is that they did this to make games quicker, You know,
How long was it? How long was an OG Overwatch match? Approximately.
Not long. I mean, 10 to 20 minutes. You know, if it went the distance, like it was back and forth, yeah, it'd probably be like a 20-minute match. So I don't have much thoughts on that other than it really throws off the game a lot because a lot of strategies were around if you had more than one tank, or say your whole team wanted to go tanks.
Right.
You couldn't be the same character, but you could run all tanks. So I don't know. It kind of limits the strategy of the 5v5, in my opinion. But again, I'm not nowhere near a pro at this game, and I don't watch professional Overwatch, so I can't speak to that. But in my mind, I think it limits the game to have just one tank in competitive Overwatch.
Well, I'm glad I'm not a huge Blizzard fan because I would be very concerned about the future of the company.
Oh yeah, the honeymoon phase is going to be over, if not already.
Yeah.
They had some broken characters that they've had to disable a few, so
Yeah.
because they were breaking the game.
Good. And a game meant to where what you said, 35 characters, so the balancing has to be perfect, and they didn't have the balancing down at launch. Good job, guys.
So my time with it is probably coming to an end. I'll probably maybe do a few matches here and there, just to reminisce about my times with Overwatch. And I do love the characters. I love all the character designs. But yeah, okay. It's done. Like for
well,
me.
when you stop, I need you to snap your PlayStation 5 in half. Okay. Since it's not a physical disc, that's the only way you can quit that game.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. It is. It really is the only way I can never quit it. It'll always be there. So, but let's move on to a much better game, a game that puts a smile to our face, and that is The Last of Us Part 1.
Well, at least a smile to my face, maybe not yours.
No, I'm enjoying it. I mean, as we've talked about with Naughty Dog, is like, man, their characters are so good. And to go back to this game and see those characters again, but even more detailed, like Tess and Bill look incredible. Like I'm in Pittsburgh, if you know where that's at. So I just left Bill. And I just fell in the basement. If people know what part that is, I don't like that part, so I had to stop. Getting out of that basement sucks.
It does. It really does.
You turn on that generator and it's like all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
So I stopped there, but just like, again, there's so much that's said, but not really said. Like after the harrowing opening, you're just introduced to Joel in a room and Tess barges in, and there's so much just said on their faces, the way they interact with each other. There's a history there. They've been through a lot, and it's like what Naughty Dog does best, and it just like I'm smiling every time like they're interacting, and Ellie's being silly and reading a joke book, and you can tell like Joel's just being frustrated with it, but he's just going with it. Mm-hmm. And then just seeing, like, because since you know what happens, I've only played through the game once, so this is my second time through it, and just seeing, how he finds her so grating at first, but she's slowly chipping away at him. That gruff, scary Joel is turning into more and more, heartwarming and open.
Fatherly.
Yep, and yes, of course, fatherly. So it's just so good. And about what has changed, I had to watch a video because I don't remember what was in Resident Evil, The Last of Us Part 1, the remake on PS4, and now this one. And I mean, the game does look incredible, but I didn't know, like, the original game was pretty incredible looking too. But watching videos about it, it's like, oh my god, like the density of just all the areas. There's more detail, there's more fauna. When you get into those grassy open fields, they just look incredible, and it's just all the things that they added to the game. And then even when you load into the game, there's just so much. You can customize this game to your heart's content of like difficulty, colors, enemies. Like it's a pretty great product.
Yeah.
It does. There's no changes to the combat, which I'm bummed about. I thought Last of Us Part 2 was finally Naughty Dog making a game that was fun to play, not just, experience and live in the world. So especially in particular with the gunplay and the combat. So unfortunately, there's no change to that in Last of Us Part 1, so it still has that weapon sway that I can't stand. And sometimes I feel like I'm missing shots that I should hit. And it's a shame, too, because the AI is incredible. I forget all about how those guys, the enemies, would just try and circle you. And it's it makes these firefights so intense because I'm waiting for this guy to poke his head out who's behind cover while tensely knowing his buddies are trying to circle around me and just come swinging at me. It's just, man, what a good game.
Would you be upset if you spent $70 on this game at launch?
If I had not played the game, no. Now there's not a chance.
Right.
If you have not played this game, this game's incredible.
Right.
But as someone who has played the game, and I love Last of Us, but it's not like a top tier franchise to me personally. Even though I love it so much, it gives me all the feels. I don't think I would, and like I said, I didn't. I could have.
So it sounds like this probably should have been a $50 game in your eyes.
Yeah,
okay.
I would recommend if you have any interest, just wait for it to be on sale, because that'll be pretty soon, I bet.
And then have you gotten to any I never played Left Behind, the DLC to the first game. Have you gotten first off, did you play Left Behind when that came out back in the day?
I think I started it and then something must have happened. I didn't finish it, so I don't think I saw the conclusion of it.
So is it its standalone thing, or did they somehow work the story into the main game? Because I know it's included with this package.
It's a standalone thing. It's a separate menu option that even when you click on it, when you boot the game up, it's like, beat The Last of Us first. So
no, I want to ruin it. Okay.
So, you can still play it, but it gives you a warning that, hey, you should finish Last of Us.
Yeah, and I'll definitely want to do that. I was curious. I didn't know if maybe they figured out a way to make it seamless, or I know it's about kind of Ellie and a friend that she has that's not in the main game, so they probably would have been hard to do that, but that's fine. No big deal.
Again, I haven't finished it, but I believe it's how she gets the bite is what happens. So
yeah, that would make sense.
But this is a great primer for the show, which we've been chopping at the bit at. So it's
cannot wait.
Man, all this is going to be covered in the show. Oof.
Yeah. That's good, man. I'm excited to check it out too. I can't wait. Yeah. That'll be a third playthrough for me.
And even the human-on-human violence, if they have that in the show, oh, God.
They will. Fucking they will. But the guy who did Chernobyl with Druckmann at a hand and it's at HBO, yeah, that's a recipe for violence.
Yeah, this show will be something. As I play the game, that's in the back of my mind is man, I'm going to have to see all this. And I can't wait to see Nick Offerman's Bill, because I forgot how crotchety Bill is, but also very likable.
Yeah. Yeah. Great character.
So yeah, good things on that front. I do plan on completing it and platinuming it as well. So I will probably do that this weekend.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So,
all right. Final tier.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. So, much to Nick's chagrin, he a little bit behind on how the sausage is made. I'm very bad at picking my topics, guys. I procrastinate. I've always been a procrastinator. I don't give Nick enough time to prep, which causes him anxiety, and then he yells at me, and then it's this whole thing, right? So, what I decided to do is I made a kind of a fun interactive thing that I thought we could kind of do over the course of a couple weeks. Might not be each and every week from here on out, but we can bring it back when we need to fill something in. And I enjoy this kind of stuff. So anybody who is familiar with the greatest sporting event of the year, that is March Madness, is familiar with a bracket. Mm-hmm. So what I've decided to put together is the definitive PlayStation Pals franchise bracket, okay? And so I didn't go all the way out with 64 because that would have been insanity. But I did pick 32 franchises from the PlayStation sphere. Now, don't yell. No, I don't want anybody to write in and be like, you ranked these incorrectly. This franchise isn't as good as this one or whatever the case. I also don't want anybody to write in and say like, well, Sony doesn't technically own that. It's a little bit of here and there, all right? I took some liberties with it, but I think it's a pretty good list to capture the big important things from PlayStation. And so, yeah, I just want to kind of go through maybe the first 4 matchups because, again, I got them seeded 1 through 8 with obviously a 1 seed playing an 8 seed, a 2 seed playing a 7, so and so forth, and then we'll keep whittling it down until we have the definitive PlayStation champion. So, again, Nick, I ranked these, so this will be all entirely decided by you. Why
don't you get a vote?
I mean, I'll vote, but like I put the list together, so like obviously 1's better than 2, 2's better than, you know what I mean? So okay. Like. We'll talk about it, you know. I'm sure. Hopefully, we get some some upsets and things like that. But
can we do this match by match?
Can we do it match by match?
Like,
what do you mean?
I don't know if you're going to list off all the matches at once, or are we just going to go game by game?
I was going to go match by match. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
So, yep. So in our first region, right? We'll call this will be the North region. We're making it now. This is the North region due to the number 1 seed in the North region. God of War, baby. Of course, Norseman Kratos, God of War, number 1. Do you agree with that ranking, Nick? Is that probably appropriate?
Yeah, of course. That is a top tier gaming franchise.
Good. All right. Can it be taken down by a game I've never played, but I know some people respect it, and that's Ape Escape. Number 8, Ape Escape. What do we think, Nick? Come on, what do we think?
I never played Ape Escape either, so this is not even a question.
I know.
God of War.
All right, yeah, that's fair. We will move God of War. Kratos goes to round 2 to destroy somebody else, I'm sure, probably the next round. All right, now, next matchup, we have a 4 versus a 5, okay? And this is this used to be a major Sony franchise that is not any longer, is not owned by them, but I feel like we have to show a little bit of respect. Number 4 seed, Spyro the Dragon, all right? And then we're taking on number 5 seed, a OG PlayStation franchise. Hasn't had a lot of shine lately, but, still one to respect, and that is Wipeout, all right? So we have number 4, Spyro the Dragon, versus number 5, Wipeout. What are we thinking, Nick?
I have
don't
Wipeout,
overthink it.
And I did not play Spyro, but that's a tough one. Who would you pick?
They are very different, and when I put this together, I just did randomizers, so like it's not like I'm not trying to give any favorites here, but it is very different, hard to compare games. Spyro the Dragon is my childhood. It's it's a really hard game for me to not just have soaked in nostalgia. And so for me, I would pick Spyro. I'm a fan of platformers. I'm a fan of collecting things. And I don't have a ton of experience with Wipeout. I've played it. The VR game is actually pretty fucking dope. But when I was getting my racing fix back in those days, I was either playing Need for Speed or Gran Turismo. So I would personally go with Spyro the Dragon. But this is a PlayStation Pals combined effort here. So
no, I think I'm with you. I think Spyro is. I'm not a big racing guy, so I think and Spyro will keep things interesting since it is a franchise you care about.
Yeah, and also too, if we're just thinking of like sales and things like that, the Spyro was a dominant juggernaut franchise on the PS1. I think it's like to this day the 9th or 10th best-selling PlayStation franchise out there. So just in that alone, I think we're good to move Spyro to round 2 to get slaughtered by a crazed Norseman. Let's see. All right. 3 versus 6 matchup. All right. This game is by Insomniac Studios.
Okay.
Any guesses? Which one do you think it is?
Ratchet and Clank.
No.
Number 3.
No, you know what? I'm an idiot. I totally don't host a PlayStation podcast. Sucker Punch. This is by Sucker Punch. Disregard me entirely.
It's a number 3, so I'm going to say...
Yep, it's
Oh, okay. You were gonna give a big clue then. It sounded like
I was say it was on PS3 and PS4.
Infamous.
3. Yep, Infamous. So we have Infamous versus our number 6, Resistance. That is the Insomniac property. So number 6, Resistance. I know it's your favorite.
I have played every game in both of these franchises. That is
Good.
But I will say this about Resistance: it's leave it dead, please. I cannot take another Reddit thread about bringing that franchise back. It was not good, okay?
Those guns are sweet, Nick. The tracer gun is dope, right? When you get to shoot that thing into something and then go hide behind some cover and just shoot into the air and it kills what you want, that's amazing. I love that thing.
It's the most forgettable franchise. It doesn't.
You're not wrong.
The best E3 demos is for Resistance 2 because they did live demos back then, and the guy
Wasn't it a
almost
fucking
died.
travesty?
Yeah, and the guy almost died in the demo. Like the red. You know how in first-person shooters, one of the biggest tropes is having the red hue around your guy. Like he was so close to dying, and he got through it. But it is a famous E3 moment of. You know, he would have been the guy to die on screen, and with those demos, who knows what would have happened if he did? You know?
Yeah, I can only imagine how red his face was.
So,
I mean, I get nervous when my friends are watching me play something. They're like, "Don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die."
yeah, just in front of millions of people was playing a game, and
yeah, no way, man.
So,
all right.
So,
What
are
we thinking?
Not even close. It's Infamous, unless you think otherwise.
No, it's the correct choice.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have our 2nd seed versus our 7th seed. And this one, you know, I don't think it needs any introduction. It held the title of the mascot platformer for the console for the entire PS3 generation, and that is Ratchet and Clank. Mm-hmm. Ratchet and Clank number 2 going against number 7, Motorstorm. I know these are easy, Nick, but you know we got to get through some of the the easy ones first.
Yeah, no, and I mean once we start getting whittled down, then it's gonna get really hard. I mean, obviously this is not even a choice. Even though I did like Motorstorm, it was one of the early PS3 games that was actually quite fun. You know.
Yeah.
But
was that Evolution?
Yeah.
Like was that was Evolution? Okay. Yeah, no, it's Ratchet and Clank again. You know, something that I've played every single one of those mainline games. I love them to death. There's just pure video game fun, and you know, it's a series that's still going. It's been around. I think the first one came out in like 2002 or 2003, and it's still going strong today. And Motorstorm has obviously been left behind for other things. So, yep, I don't think it's a contest either. So, just to kind of read off what we got going into round 2 now. Next round, we will have God of War versus Spyro the Dragon, and then Infamous versus Ratchet and Clank. Mm-hmm. And that's our first region for the first round.
Okay, that was fun.
Yeah, you know, and so we got obviously another 24 games to go through in the first round. So you know, we got some obvious ones, and then maybe a couple that you might not be thinking of. But I think overall they are pretty good PlayStation representations. So.
Okay. This is pretty clever of you. Now you have a topic for weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Now I don't have to listen to you bitch at me.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, we'll see.
Cool.
We'll try and figure out a way that we can like host this so other people can see and keep track of. We'll work on that. But,
yeah, and you make it all pretty because right now it's just a gross Excel spreadsheet, you know, like everything else in our life. So
yeah, but okay, yeah, the reoccurring segment, I love it.
Perfect. Yay!
All right, so that's another 6 things done. Again, I think I'll apologize for all the issues we had.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Just make sure if there's another, you know, everybody's going to Washington, D.C., you don't go this time, all right? Just stay home.
I hate you. Saying that. So we are going to leave you on a song from Spiritfarer. I completed it. It is a great game. And I don't think we talked much about this, but it does deal with death a lot. And if you've ever had a death of a loved one, this game can be very cathartic for you. I actually really enjoyed how it ended as the ideal of accepting death is run throughout the game, and so that's great. And including in the credits, they list a bunch of people in their lives that had died. So
Yeah.
And this song plays over those credits. It is called "What Will You Leave Behind." It is by Max LL. He did the whole soundtrack for the game, and this has vocals by Maud Plant Husarek.
Very good.
Yep. Enjoy the song. And then do we have anything to tease for next week?
I'm getting that damn Cuphead Platinum. I only have, all I have to do is, I got the store all bought. I just have to beat every boss on Expert, and I've got 2 of the 3 islands done. So probably about another 8 bosses, and I got it. So
Wow.
I'll be working on that, and then hopefully finishing up Disco Elysium right after that, because I think I'm pretty close to the end there as well. So
Okay.
a little wrapping up for me until you give me Last of Us 1, and I'll do that.
Sweet. That's a solid plan.
Yeah.
I plan on finishing Last of Us Part 1 and then going right into Plague Tale Requiem, which is coming out this upcoming Tuesday. And hopefully I'll have some time with the game so I can bring it next week.
Yeah, we're gonna be eating good. We're gonna be eating good for honestly, dude. Honestly, we're gonna be eating good. You got Plague Tale now, God of War next month, Callisto Protocol the month after that. The month after that, we got Dead Space, and then we're into it, man. We're into some good stuff.
Yeah, as long as there isn't any delays. We'll see what happens.
That's
And,
what.
And of course, if there are, we still got PlayStation Plus keeping us cozy
Yeah.
with all
Oh,
those
yeah.
games. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, so the bracket will return next week, and I do want to do a God of War 2018 retrospective. As we started hyping up the upcoming God of War Ragnarok release, we should be talking about it. So
Yeah, maybe first week of November. That'll be like the 3rd or the 4th. It's probably a good time to break it out and then get ourselves super hyped.
Yep. Oh man, cannot wait. All right, well, thank you guys again for listening to us. We will be back next week with 6 more things. All right, bye guys.
See you guys.
Flowing through the seas of time, memories that were left behind bring us closer to the end of this journey where we grew as friends. Take me through the mist and storms in waters that are still unknown. Under guiding starlit sky, we will learn how to say goodbye. And I'll take your hand and guide you through all the steps one takes to move on to a place, a world unseen to us all. But it's okay, we'll be together. And I'll take your hand and guide you through all the steps one takes to move on to a place, a world unseen to us all. But I know we will remember. And I'll take your hand and guide you through all the steps one takes to move on to a place.